You're listening to Business Stories with Ryan Arcaracci, where I speak to business professionals from all walks of life. Thanks for listening, and let's get to it. Good to have you back, everybody. This is Ryan. Digital marketing is ever-changing. SEO, PPC, all the acronyms. It's getting to be cluttered and confusing. And my guest today is a man who has plenty of experience. In fact, he's an educator in SEO and digital marketing. Mr. Alan Bush is here to talk to all of us about how to approach digital marketing in 2022 and beyond. Alan, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate you being here, and I would love to talk about anything you need me to talk about. Let's get this started.
Great. Yeah. So talk to us about what you're doing now. You've got a lot of different roles. You're instructing. So tell us what you're doing and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I'm a 15-year veteran in the internet marketing space, primarily working with SEO. I've dabbled in a little PPC and social media as well, but my primary role has been SEO. I currently work as the VP of strategy at a company called Ignite Visibility. It's an internet marketing agency here in San Diego. We work with a lot of large clients. So we started kind of small, and now we work with the likes of the HBOs and Oprah Network, those type of people. So it's really great to see the growth there. And on top of that, I've been doing for 7 years teaching at the University of California, San Diego. And as of recently, about a year and a half ago, started teaching at the University of San Diego, both SEO classes. And I really enjoy being an educator. I get to work with a lot of great students, and many of my students aren't just students. There are some small business owners, and in some cases, large companies that will send their employees to learn more about digital marketing, considering that the classes that I teach are extension classes. They're not necessarily part of the curriculum. You could get credits for it towards your degree, but they're outside of the degree as well. So you could take it if you wanted to.
That's great. So, I mean, if you're starting a business or you have a business now, it's very complicated, digital marketing, because most people I talk to really don't know where to start, where to invest their money, and what the strategy should be, because every vertical or every business is different, every market's different, and every demographic you're trying to reach is different. So from your perspective as an educator, where do you tell people to start? Like what is the best method to just get your feet on the ground with it?
That's a great question, because a lot of people think SEO is just a series of tactics. And where I really start with my students, especially, is saying, well, you really have to understand who you are. Get your elevator pitch right and your messaging right. Because the best you do that, the better that the people that are coming from websites will see that you have your stuff together, but right. Also the language that people use to describe you should be congruent with what you're trying to pull across.
Yeah.
So a lot of times in class, matter of fact, almost every single time in class, I'll pick a student, say, what's your business? What's your website? And then we'll do an activity. What I do is a brainstorm activity. I'll start with their name. Let me break down peach for a minute. What do you think of peaches? And then we'll talk about what those mean. And then we'll go, okay, I'm looking at my can right here, peach vibe. Yeah. Vibe. What about, what does vibe mean to you? And then a lot of it will crowdsource all the students in the room. Yeah. And what's great about that is that the language that people come up with might be slightly different than what people see themselves as. Yeah. So the trick is to get your language and the language that people perceive of you to meet. Because what happens is that we start thinking in this filter bubble that we've created for one another, for each other, and not how we should market ourselves. And you'd be surprised how many businesses, or especially when they're starting out, don't really understand themselves and how they come across. So just doing that exercise really opens the floodgates into developing content pieces. As a matter of fact, after we do the brainstorm activity, I show them that you could just connect the dots between the categories and the columns that we've built, and you have a blog idea.
Right.
And then also making sure that you're getting feedback as to your messaging through other people's eyes. And then that way you'll be able to speak the language and have people come to you for answers. So that's the secret, quote unquote, behind SEO. The rest of it could be tactical, but the language, the things that you need to understand is getting your language about you down. And then from there, you could then go, okay, I could use tools and certain tactics to then draw SEO content and links and the structure of my website, those type of things. But that's my first step.
That's interesting. And one of the biggest things I come across with business owners is they don't know they know they have to create content and they know they have to put stuff out there, but they have no clue what they should be putting out there or
Yeah.
what channels are the best channels for that content. So how do
Yeah.
you I mean, and there's so much, and you know as well as I do, it's very saturated. There's so much content out
Yeah.
there. You know, if
Right.
you're, especially if you're in an industry like real estate or something, or insurance, where it's just flooded with people doing it, right? How do you recommend getting to be a cut above the rest and separating yourself from the market that's saturated in a particular industry and you're kind of just another small fish in the pond, right? How do you recommend being a differentiator or unique in the market space in terms of SEO?
Yeah, and that's a good one too, because a lot of times this is where strategy comes in and says, I use anecdotes like for myself. I don't go to a lot of marketing conventions myself unless I'm
Yeah,
speaking at them
right.
because, like you said, it's saturated. What
Yeah,
I would do is go to a real estate convention. Matter of fact, I did a talk at realtor.org,
yeah,
and funny enough, I'll give you a little bit of the story. I get to this I'm on a panel for the realtors, and there are
yeah,
people that are branding experts, a couple of other people, and they have me as the SEO person. And my two colleagues that were next to me had notes, and I didn't have any notes. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll talk about this thing.
yeah.
But what happened is that after the moderation portion of it was over, they went open to questions, and 90% of the questions were geared towards me.
Yeah,
And is because I didn't know about real estate,
yeah,
but I knew about the marketing that they needed.
yeah,
And so a lot of times what you have to do is figure out, okay, if the market's saturated, what's peripherally related to you that you could kind of be the expert in that particular order, like a conference or a panel or a piece of content that talks about it in a certain way.
yeah.
So I think that's where you have to kind of pivot your strategy and figure out other entry points to get people's attention. And answering questions and becoming kind of an education resource is one way. I also recommend joining forums that, like I said, are tangentially related to what you do and not necessarily exactly what you do. And that way
Right.
you will stand out there and get people's attention from your perspective. And then when they need your product, they'll come find you. So those are a couple different ways. One other thing I also recommend is that because, like you said, there's so much saturation with the types of content you can develop. But if you create one really good idea, do the hardest thing it is to do with content. For example, a video. You could create a video off a really great idea, but what you could do with that video, let's say it's 10 minutes long, 15 minutes, is you take it, break it down into pieces. You could make smaller videos for social media. Then you have transcriptions which become blogs. Then you have images from the video, which you could put on a Pinterest type of website. Then you have an audio from the video, which you could syndicate on podcasts. And now you've taken you can make a slideshow out of the same video. You've taken one idea and created, let's say exponentially, 30, 40 pieces of content from it.
Right.
And then you could just saturate the web with all that same idea. And a lot of people, I'm surprised the amount of people that don't do it that way. They
Yeah.
think they have to constantly write or create new content for each channel. And not saying you shouldn't, but if your resources are limited and you're a one person army, then start working smarter, not harder. Make it easy for yourself,
Right.
and just be consistent and push it out there. And your following will start to come, and they'll see that you're in a lot of places because a lot of people will hear about you, forget about you, look you up somewhere else, and there you are again in a different
Right.
format. So now you're like, okay, I'm also on Apple, I'm also on YouTube, I'm also on there, and you see that brand being appearing there. And it doesn't even have to be that you're creating a million pieces of new content. Just create really compelling content in your industry and then syndicate it across the web.
So one question I have for you too, because I like to read a lot about this, and a lot of what I read is about creating emotionally driven content, right? So
Yeah.
not necessarily, I mean, the old school ways to go out and sell a product and say, hey, you need my product, you need my services, call me, email me.
Right.
That way is out the door now. It's about storytelling, it's about tapping into the consumer's emotions. Do you feel like that's a viable solution, and how should people approach that idea?
Yeah, 90% of, I would say, the recent life with people making decisions, it's because they're emotionally driven. Everybody wants something,
Yeah.
But if you touch a spot in their heart or in their brain that makes them think, then you're going to develop a person that's a client or a customer that's more loyal to you.
Yeah.
Because maybe everyone has what you sell, but they buy your product because they're emotionally driven to buy it on some level.
Right.
Finding that out is difficult because you do have, what does that mean if you sell real estate? Well, it's like, okay, I sell real estate. Do I have the best houses and the best prices? Maybe, but also, I'm also thinking about your safety. I'll give you an anecdote because I used to be a loan officer prior to doing SEO.
Mhm.
And one of the strategies that we had is like, we want to be your, lender for life. So we want you to come here. And there's a couple instances where I would teach people how to manage their money. If
Mhm.
they got a specific loan and they're saving money on it, well, what you could do is through the 5 years you have this interest rate, start saving money like you had it, like you didn't have this interest rate, put it aside here, and then refinance here. So we start coaching people how to manage their money.
Yep.
And then people become a lot more associated with that rather than, oh, you have the lowest rate.
Yeah.
Right? I even beat someone's dad out of a loan because there was a lady her dad had a really good hookup, and we were like neck and neck. And but then the interest rates lowered where I was, and also I didn't have to make as much money off of the loan I was supposed to. I just lowered the amount I was going to make and
Yep.
said, well, what I could do is cover your closing costs. And I know that's probably a big, huge expense for you. So I'll take care of it. Can your dad do that? And then when she came back, she said, nope. The dad said, go with you.
Wow.
I said, oh, great. And
Wow.
that was a really kind of a cool moment because it was a
Yeah.
refinance and everything was neck and neck. And I had to beat the trust of her father.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a tactic. I wasn't trying to trick her. I got her everything she needed. I just made sure that she got the best. I cared about her plight, and
Right.
and she became a lot more emotionally invested. And one more situation from that loan thing, I had a guy that literally thought I couldn't do the loan, and when I finally, this is a lesson to just ask the question, hey, why aren't you doing this? And my friend said, just call that guy up and ask him why he's not doing it. I
Yeah.
said, okay, I did. And he goes, well, honestly, I don't think you could do that loan. And I said, all right, well, and I convinced him. And once I did, he said, man, I think you could do that. And he did 3 more loans with me.
Wow.
So it was just about trust and whether or not he trusted me.
Yeah.
Any piece of content you're out there, especially now with the web being the way it is,
Yep.
you have to be trusted.
Right.
And people have to trust that you're not trying to take advantage of them or rip them off or, so if they're connected to the emotional content, you're providing some kind of value service outside of what they're buying, they'll start trusting you a lot more.
Yeah. And I have an interesting question for you because I work with a lot of franchisors, and franchisors, especially emerging ones, are always trying to sell the brand, right? They want to increase the size, sell more locations, sell more units. So they can become the next, McDonald's or Pizza Hut or whatever.
Sure.
And there's literally thousands of franchises out there that are growing every day. But they're selling their brand to people that want to buy it. They want to buy a franchise, and it's not a cheap investment. I mean, sometimes this could be 6 figures or more. Sometimes it could be $1 million or more to buy a franchise. So it's a harder sell because it's literally a life-changing, situation. Should you buy a franchise, right? It changes everything, and it becomes more of a financial responsibility once you own a business like that. So what is your take on how to utilize SEO or content to do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I actually work with quite a handful, I should say, of franchisors. And interestingly, what we did as an agency and what I did personally, because they were the ones that were under my umbrella, is I went out to the regional managers and gave them lessons on SEO.
Yeah.
So they could trickle it down to the people that are running the franchise. So you're basically educating people not only about their brand, but like how to market their individual selves and their individual sites, or consolidate their sites into one, and make sure that the locations are getting attention.
Yeah.
And then that's the idea, is that really education it goes a long way. I'm such a huge proponent of it because I've seen people react and respect and love when people are doing that.
Yeah.
And we went out there, me and one of my colleagues flew out to Florida and then to Boston and did two workshops for them, for the East Coast managers of that franchise. And they, in turn, I even gave access to some of the franchisees. I probably shouldn't have done this, but thankfully they didn't abuse it. But I said, if anybody in your franchise under your umbrella wants to contact me for, a half-hour chat or something,
Oh,
they're more than welcome. But yeah, I opened
yeah.
the floodgates. It was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why I said that, but
Yeah.
I cared. I really I
Right.
really wanted them to be there. And
Yeah.
sure enough, there was only like one or two that were really like, oh my God, yeah, can we talk to you? I would love
Yeah.
to know about how do you do this? What do you do? And they
Yeah.
wanted to pick my brain, but I loved it. I thought it was really great. And it was a really big step. I mean, they're still clients, let's put it this way. So,
Right.
and that was many years ago. So it was a great way to empower the people that are they're buying into this franchise, that they're going to get help not only with just the standard things related to the building and the materials or whatever, but it's more like, hey, we're going to help you educate yourself, and we want you to make your money back and then some when the investment happens. So here's how to do this. So we're going to educate you on how to best push your brand out there. So and our brand, of course, that's what it is, but like your individual piece of that brand.
Right. And a lot of what I've heard just talking to people too is the brand isn't just your logo and your colors. It's really how you make your customers feel, right? So,
Absolutely.
you know, when you go into a McDonald's or something, you feel a certain way, like you're there to get a quick meal and it's a fun atmosphere for kids and family and things like that. But let's say you go to like a high-end restaurant, right? It's a different feel. It's a different kind of vibe. So,
Yeah.
you know, how like, and a lot with that with SEO has been when I was selling it a lot. I would tell people, it takes time to get ranked and get found and get the traffic. Has that changed? I mean, this was years ago. Has that changed at all? Do you see that SEO is not as long? It doesn't take as long to get, the visitors and the traffic and the eyeballs as it used to? Is that changing? Is the industry changing in that regard?
It's no, it's the same. I would say the tactics and methods of getting those users are a lot harder now. Back
Okay.
in the day, and I don't know if we were in the same category, but you could just get a bunch of links and that would win, right?
Yeah.
But that you can't do that any longer, because
Yeah.
there's a lot more that Google and other websites, search engines, are paying attention to. This
Right.
includes your social status in terms of where you put your brand out there. But for the most part, the SEO I could divide into four main pillars. That's your site architecture, your code optimization, your content, and your backlinks. And that hasn't really changed since I've been in the industry, just the methods in which those things are being applied. So,
Right.
you can't have a poorly structured website as well as you could back in the day, because they have better ways of telling you what structure means, right?
Yeah.
Your navigation, that type of things. And then you have the code. Again, if you're filled with a lot of JavaScript, for example, it may take longer for them to read that.
Yeah.
So versus having something that's in a basic HTML or something a little more simply built. But
Yeah.
that being said, you don't want to lose your user experience either. So you got to find some midway where it's good page speed, it's good, the structure of it, the code's clean, or at least presentable to the search engines faster. Even if you have really complicated content management systems, then
Right.
you get into content, and then the content is where you got. I I know your name has what I usually, an acronym is kind of something I've coined when I've been teaching. It's ARC. You
Yeah.
have to have awareness, research, and conversion content on your website.
Mhm.
Now, most people are really good with the conversion. They know what they sell. Some people might even include their research content, meaning that, okay, you need more information. I have this here. And then you have less that are really good with the awareness. I'm going to pull you in through blogging, through other methods, into then wanting to do research, finding me, and then coming and going to the conversion point. But everyone goes through that arc.
Yeah.
And everyone has the method of doing that. And I feel that if you think of it that way, then you'll start developing content strategies that link to one another and have that purpose.
Yeah.
And that's what the intent is, and that's where the newest thing that Google has really been doing is focusing really heavily on the intent. What do you mean by what you're searching?
Mhm.
And the algorithms are getting way better and are aimed now at talking about intent.
Right.
They're not just, the days of just typing one word or two words. That's I wouldn't say they're over. They work for really major brands, but if you can get people's intent, a lot of people are asking questions. They're
Right.
talking to Google literally on their phone. Literally on their phone, they're just talking to it, and they're treating the search engine almost like they would treat a person.
Right.
They ask it questions. They do different types of searches. They don't normally get what they want off the first search. Now, granted, if you rank for a really high rank authoritative keyword, yeah, bless your heart. I'm glad you made it there.
Yeah.
But in the interim, you may want to start focusing on building a net so that you can capture more people, and in those small searches that add up to a lot more than that one word that you're maybe targeting. So, and then eventually you'll leads to that. You'll rank faster. So that's the way to do it. And then with the backlinks, you can't buy them anymore.
Right.
You have to more or less earn them. So
Yeah.
that comes with trust. That comes with reaching out to the right people. That's through relationships in a lot of ways, and it does take time. But I will say that the quality will overthrow the quantity. So you could rank faster if you've got a lot of good qualitative places that that are reinforcing your ideas and linking to you versus having millions of links. So that has changed a bit. It used to be that you just buy a bunch of links and you win, but
Yeah.
now it's more about the authority and the trustworthiness of the places that are linking to you. And then the Google, as they see you're building content, you'll start to rank faster. I've taken a personal website from 0 to 3,000 visits a day, almost not linking to myself, no
Wow.
links. And it was basically what I just said through content, and going to certain locations like forums and talking to them. And the links I did get were what they call no follow, meaning that they didn't pass authority to me. But that over time, it was a niche market. I talked to the right types of people. Again, I was kind of a bigger fish in a smaller pond in those forums, and the right people started linking to me.
Right.
And then I was just putting out content every week, and then eventually started growing, and then I look about a year later, I'm getting 3,000 visits per day, and I barely have to touch the website.
That's interesting. And I was going to ask you too. I mean, if you're starting out, let's say you're in a saturated market like insurance or real estate or something like that, could you sit down and say, well, but what is my niche, right? Like, could I create content around selling to new homeowners only, or
Mm-hmm.
people of a certain age group, or people in a certain area, right? Do you think that creating content around a niche or around a specialty is effective? I mean, it sounds like that's kind of what you did, right?
Yeah. It's like you could become a persona.
Yeah.
And one of the methods that I teach, and this goes a little bit beyond the traditional SEO, and is that there's certain personas that are in the arc that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But if you look at I have a method, and I'm writing a lot about this on the side, is that there's if you think about there's a law called the diffusion of innovation by Everett Rogers,
Mhm.
and essentially talks about the tipping point in which people make decisions. But
Mhm.
you have, in the beginning, you have your leaders, and in the middle you have your people that are kind of the pragmatists, probably the bulk of who would buy what you're doing if you think about it in a sine curve arc. And then the people at the end are the latter, are the conservatives, the people that are laggards. They don't trust you,
Yeah.
but they don't know about you. And so if you could convince the people, the leadership in the space, to advocate for you, then the people that are in the middle that will probably buy something from you
Yep.
will be more apt to do so, and then they'll convince the other people to come there. But you have to develop your personas and figure out what is their goal, and what conversion point would you want them to take. So
Right.
for a celebrity, you don't necessarily want them to buy your insurance.
Yeah.
The general, which we've worked with actually, Shaq, we don't care that Shaq bought the general.
Yeah.
We care that Shaq is on those commercials dancing around and hanging out with this cartoon character.
Right.
Right. So he's going to get people's attention, and that works well for them. Not of course, everyone can't hire Shaq, but the leaders don't have to be celebrities. They could be just people that are really pioneering or writing a book or whatever it is.
Yep.
You just need them to advocate for you, and through their means, and talk to their audience about what you're doing. So if you're an insurance company, it's not very sexy. So you got to figure out, well, everyone likes money. So maybe I'll talk to a finance guru.
Yeah.
Or, maybe I'll talk to a safety person.
Right.
And some people that are a little bit peripherally related to why you would even want to invest in insurance in the first place.
Right.
And then you start providing that research content for people that are starting to be interested, to the people in the middle, the what I call the pragmatists, some people that are there, but they're become your clients later. And then the rest, as that flow happens and you start building a bigger audience, the laggards are, then you get to their pain points. Why do you not want to do this deal? As I said with earlier,
right?
Just ask them, what is it that you need from me?
Yeah.
And then they see that you care. They see that all these people are advocating for you, and then they come over to the pragmatist side after a while.
Right. Right. So I want to ask you a unique question here. Let's say, you and I both know that digital marketing is ever evolving, right? So, and with AI and everything coming up, let's say we jump into the future 10 years from now, you and I are talking. What do you see happening at that point? I mean, I think the world's going to be drastically different. But what's your opinion on the future?
So yeah, that's really tricky, because it's getting more and more that bots are writing content, and you're going to have to make more human related content. So you definitely have to start appealing to emotions, because a bot can write certain things about what you do, but it's going to be about relationships,
right?
Everything's going to be more, to stay ahead, you have to develop relationships. You can't just sit idly by and let the content speak for you. You have to speak. So something like this podcast even is a step in the right direction. Getting on podcasts is a step in the right direction. People that are building their brand. One thing I noticed that, the difference between people who are just kind of playing it low and people who put their face out there, so to speak, that those people that are willing to take the risk to get a brand advocate to go out there and make moves and talk to people. And connect with their audience, because bots can't do that.
Right.
And so getting on the podcast, the leader of Ignite Visibility, the agency I work for, John, is huge on that. He creates content, and he goes out there and we do webinars, and he and I both go to different platforms and speak at certain engagements just to keep our brand out there.
Right.
Personal brand and your professional brand. And I think, and even me being a teacher is a brand advocate. So that, works in your favor if you give back to the community through your appearances and do it for free. You don't need to get paid for everything.
Right.
But ultimately, the people will start seeing you, beyond the writings and the AI stuff that's being out there.
Right. Well, this has been a good conversation. I really appreciate you coming on, Alan. So if people do want to connect with you or learn more from you, where can they find you, or where can they learn more from you? How do they reach you with that?
And professionally, anything with Alan H. Bush or One Never Ends, you could probably find me in terms, because there's another Alan Bush that has my email, but Alan H. Bush, ALANHBUSH, pretty much any social media platform there. And then also my kind of music brand is one. I do produce music on the side. One Never Ends. I spell out the word one, is also there. I'm also working for Ignite Visibility, so you could always check them out, ignitevisibility.com. And also, if you're interested in taking a class on SEO, go to University of California, San Diego, or the University of San Diego, type in SEO class, and I'm the teacher there. So I would love to hear anybody of your people that are out there, reach out to me, and I'll get you in the class.
That sounds good. If you're listening and you want to learn more about SEO, digital marketing, or just get some information, some ideas, Alan is the guy to reach out to. Thanks again, Alan. It's been a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in becoming an episode sponsor, please email me at livingryan@gmail.com. And thank you so much.